Hi, I'm Leighton, and my question is, who has been the most influential person in shaping you who you are today?
I would say probably my mother, one of the bravest and most dedicated persons that I know.
I'm Victoria, and my question is, how do you view the role of AI in promoting peace?
Well, thank you, Victoria. Well, AI it allows you to search across a lot of information across the world, and it allows you to look at previous history and kind of compare that with things that have been done in the past, many years before you and I were all born, and how people successfully navigated through conflict. So it can be very helpful in that way. It helps you to look at a lot of things in a much faster way. So when you're thinking about artificial intelligence, it doesn't replace human judgment at this point, but it allows you to get information faster and compare it much quicker than you may have in the past.
I'm Bethany, and my question is, what do you think the future holds for Marine Corps?
Well, I think the Marine Corps has been around longer than the United States has, and so as long as the American people want Marines to be there to help them win battles against the United States enemies, I think it'll be there for a long time. Like all military services, it goes through transformations to improve the way it does its work, both in terms of battle against enemies and of course non-combat situations as well.
Hi, my name is Jessica, and my question is, what advice would you give to young people aspiring to work in diplomacy and conflict resolution to make positive impact on global peace?
The encouragement for anybody that wants to work in the area of peace is that peace is a much better way than conflict to solve problems. And so for those that want to be in the world of peace and tranquility, what you want to be able to do is figure out how to help people resolve conflicts before they become conflicts. And so this is a very artful skill. And so, as young people, the more you can understand how to develop the skills to reduce conflict, you always have peace. It's when you can't resolve conflict that you don't have peace. And unfortunately, sometimes the military has to be called in, and but it's much more efficient to be involved in peace and diplomatic activities than it is in conflict. So anytime we can do that, and anybody that wants to be in that, it's a very honorable thing to do.
So, why is it more efficient?
Well, it's more efficient because the cost of conflict is much greater. If you think about conflict, every war that has ever existed on the planet, for the people that participate in it or have been affected by it, it's anywhere from 80 to 100 years until you recover. And most of that means you're rebuilding society, you're rebuilding the economy, you're rebuilding broken lives or people that have been injured. You're rebuilding their health. So that all has a cost, and that's much more expensive than having peace.
My name is Theodore, and my question is, what sacrifices are necessary for achieving peace?
Well, I would say the greatest sacrifice for achieving peace is to get the parties that have conflict to sit down and discuss what the differences are and figure out what a peaceful resolution will be to solve their problems. If you think about conflict and what um, doesn't allow peace to have, it usually evolves around political discourse. It evolves around the economy. People want your land, they want your water, they want your food, they maybe want your medical services. And when you have this competition going on, and it becomes a one-sided affair. In other words, one side wants to have something and the other side doesn't want to give it up. It becomes tension and conflict. So the best thing you can do is figure out how not to have that conflict by sitting down and having peaceful conversations.
I want to ask if you ever work with the UN.
Yes, I have. I've worked with the UN in places like Iraq and Afghanistan and Africa, and it's a very capable organization. Of course, all the countries of the world have to work with them as well when there's conflict. As you know, with some of the conflicts going on right now, it's been very difficult for the UN to work in certain places, like in Gaza and Israel and some other places around the world. So, but I'm a great fan of the UN, and I think they are have been there for the development of world peace since World War II, actually since World War I, if you consider the League of Nations was the predecessor to the United Nations. So, yes, I love working with the UN, and I think what they do is great and fabulous work.
Hi, my name is Emily, and what draws you to Model United Nations?
Good organization to help young people to learn about the UN, learn the skills of diplomacy, solve conflicts, and solve difficult problems. You know, the greatest thing that you can do is to develop your thinking and critical thinking skills to solve complex problems. And the more we do that, the less problems we'll have in the world. And as you know, most conflicts, as I mentioned earlier, are caused by many different things. You know, whether it's people that want to occupy somebody's land or take that land, take their resources such as water, gold, oil, mineral resources, that sort of thing, and it leads to conflict. And what you learn in Model UN is how the real committees in the UN solve those problems, and you get the opportunity to exercise those skills early in your career. So if you decide to join an organization like the UN or the U.S. State Department or other global organizations that work with the UN, it's a great way to enter that field.
I'm Shefali. How can the Sustainable Development Goals contribute to peace?
Well, thank you, Savoli. I think the 17 UN goals are designed to really help everybody understand the things that help people in life to have a good life. And so when you think about reducing hunger, providing clean water, taking care of the needs of displaced persons and things of that nature, you're going to make life better for those individuals. You know, some of you may have known or have family members that have come to the United States because of conflicts in the home countries. And so when you think about what caused some of those conflicts, it may have been a violation of the sustainable goal that, or one of the sustainable goals that you have been reading about and studying. So the more we can provide the sustainable goals for individuals, individual countries, the better life will be.
Hi, I'm Nolan, and can you share stories of successfully resolving a conflict through peaceful means?
Sure, successful conflicts. Well, there's many, but I'll talk about one which occurred during the Iraq War. You know, the military was at conflict with Sunni tribes in western Al Anbar province. This would be the area west of the city of Baghdad, which is the capital of Iraq, and it extends all the way to the Syrian border, to the Saudi border, and to the Jordanian border. So if you think of how big the state of Texas is, that's about how big Al Anbar province was. So the Sunni tribes early on were having a lot of very serious fights with the military. And so when I came back on a subsequent tour, I was really disappointed by what much of our activities were in the war. And so one of the things I had mentioned to our head general was General Casey at the time. And I said, you know, when I come back, I'm going to talk to all the terrorists and find out what they want. And of course, the comment to me was made that we don't negotiate with terrorists. And I said, well, that's a fine point, because I didn't say we're going to negotiate with terrorists. I'm going to talk with them and find out what they want. And it's because in the 2 years that the war was underway, the United States and our allies really didn't ask the Sunnis what they wanted. So we had a meeting in the middle of the city of Ramadi, which is the capital of Al Anbar province, much like Austin is the capital of Texas. Ramadi would have been the capital of Al Anbar province, again, about the same size as Texas. And so what we decided to do was have a discussion about how we stop the conflict. And that activity became known as the Sunni Awakening. So if you ever read about the Sunni Awakening, there were a lot of people involved after me, but at the end of the day, the idea was to get the Sunnis to stop shooting at the U.S. and coalition troops, and then figure out how we create peace, which we were able to do. And of course, that had allowed several things to happen. One, it allowed our ambassador at the time to Iraq, Ambassador Khalilzad, was able to come to Al Anbar province and meet with us. And then we also had President Bush a couple years later come as the conflict settled down. And of course, he was able to fulfill a promise that we had made, that we would have the president come. And on top of that, we then brought the Sunnis to Washington, D.C., and then we brought them to Houston, Texas. And so some of you guys may not have been around when they came to Houston, but that was the culmination of the entire peace process. So so that gives you a little background on something that we did that helped resolve a conflict, which eventually, obviously, we pulled out of Iraq. And of course, we do have relationships with Iraq, but it's not the way it was during the war. It's much more peaceful.
So one idea made a big difference.
Absolutely. And I would tell you, for anybody that wants to resolve a conflict, you always have to ask the other side, what is it that they're looking for? If you only come up with the answer and it's a one-sided answer and they're not involved, you will continue to have conflict. So you always have to have the people that you're in conflict with figure out how to resolve the conflict with you. And, you know, that goes the same for your friends in school. You know, if you have a conflict, then, hey, how do we solve this so that we're not at each other's throat or fighting with each other or something of that nature? So if you can solve that and use your critical thinking skills, you're going to have a great life.
I'm Sophia, and my question is, I was wondering why you think critical thinking is so important in these scenarios. You keep mentioning it, but I just want to understand why you think it's such a big process into what you've been doing.
Well, thank you, Sophia. Well, I think it's for every human being, you know, critical thinking is really about several things. One is to expand what I call the best weapon that you have, and that's the one between your ears. You know, and the smarter you are, the better you will be. And so in critical thinking, it's about problem solving. It's about, what do I need to know? What does the other person know? What information don't I know? So where do I get that information? How do I assemble this information? How do I present this information? And sometimes you have to think of it in terms of speed. how fast can I solve a problem before it becomes a conflict? So the more you think about it, the better it becomes in terms of a resolution and solution. So just like if you were in math class, right? You know, there's only 4 things you can do in math: add, subtract, multiply, and divide. But then you got to figure out the formulas and how to apply them in the areas that your teachers may ask you to do that. So you have to be a critical thinker. So you have the basics, but now how do I deal with the complexities? And that's what critical thinking is about. How do you deal with complexities? And do I have enough capacity in my best weapon, your brain, your mind, to solve a problem?
So what I understood from that is basically critical thinking is about what do you know, what does the other person know, how can you figure out what you need to know, and it's a way of trying to process most of this information to find a solution. So as your example in math class, you put it all together. How do I find the formula to solve this equation of what the problem is?
Right. Well, and that's a good way to look at it. And I think the other piece that you can look at is you have to have an understanding of history. So if you don't know what was done in the past in a certain area of the world, you have to know that history, because if you walk into that area of the world and you do not understand what the history was, maybe your solution won't work. So you also have to understand the history of a particular area.
Yeah.
Does that help you?
It does. I think it adds another aspect to how to critical think.
In fact, if you want to say what is the greatest quality you can have as a critical thinker, it's discipline. And then the second greatest quality is persistence. Because if you are disciplined enough, you will find the problem. If you're persistent enough, which means you'll stay in the discussion, the analysis, as long as you need to, you'll eventually find a solution. You know, the people that usually fail at critical thinking are the ones that get tired, either mentally tired, physically tired, spiritually tired, emotionally tired. But those who succeed will be disciplined enough to get through all that.
Trying to find a way, and then the discipline is making sure you can. That's what critical thinking is. Find a way to do it.
There you go. Excellent.
What does it take to ensure safety in high pressure situations?
Well, in high pressure situations, it's I always say if you got there, you're now in what I call a crisis, and depends on how extreme that crisis and that high pressure situation is. You know, there are things that you have to do immediately. So if it's about safety, what do you do to keep your family, your friends, your school safe? So that becomes, what are your actions? What do you do to resolve that? If you're in a high pressure situation and it's not about a physical safety, then it may be more about an emotional safety or the reduction of and the escalation of an issue, and how do you suppress that? And this is where cool thinking brains that do critical thinking come in. How do I defuse the situation? And I'll use an example which some of you might be familiar with, and that's, you know, when the police come to a situation, they can, because I've worked with police quite a bit here in North Texas, and we talk about this all the time. You can start a conflict by just a few words. If your words are negative, you can escalate a situation that didn't need to be escalated. If you can calm the situation and you can think through the process, you can calm the situation down and not have a conflict. So I would say in high pressure situations, again, it's how you think about it, how you speak about it, because your words matter. And if your words are aggressive, probably the other side will be aggressive too. So you have to figure out how to defuse the situation.
What valuable qualities have you gained from your years of military?
Well, I would say, I was pretty disciplined when I came in the military. I would say I got more disciplined, and I because of my exposure being around the world quite a bit. Of course, I was very familiar with many of the cultures I was going to interface with, but there's nothing like traveling around the world and understanding what other cultures go through. And so I would tell you that, as I told my Marines when I retired from the Marine Corps, I said, the best Marine, just like I think the best person, will be the one that can speak 5 or 6 languages and knows 100 cultures, because that will allow you to move about the earth, pretty much being able to communicate just about with anybody on the planet.
So how did you become disciplined initially?
Well, I was always involved in sports, so sports was part of that. I was always involved in martial arts. I was involved in martial arts since I was about 3 years old. So that all of that probably added up to my disciplined life. My family, a military family, is you have people when you're growing up, you have people that can cause trouble, people that do trouble. And, I was never part of those individuals. In fact, I was probably the anti-bully guy. So the bullies never really wanted to see me. So I was much more disciplined in that sense. And when you think about a disciplined life, it's about what do you do to improve yourself. And so for me, improvement is a constant thing, whether it's education, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of that. So that all goes into the bucket of discipline, if you will.
What qualities make a good leader?
Sure. I think any good leaders do a couple things. It doesn't matter what organization, what environment is. Number one, good leaders always have a vision. They know where they're going. And then they are able to communicate that vision to the people that work with them. And then they understand what that vision means. And they understand what the goal is of the organization. So you have a great vision first. You understand what your mission is. And if you understand your mission, you know the next step, which is how to execute that mission. And so, when you're in school, you're trying to learn everything that you could possibly learn while you're in school, so that when you leave school, that you have the tools and the capabilities to go just about anywhere you need to go. So a leader constantly improves themselves, constantly looks for people that improve themselves, and they try to express that in their vision. And so for successful organizations, successful schools, successful teams, successful military, the leaders always have a vision of what the end state is. The end state is what's your goal? Maybe in sports, it's to win the championship. Okay, so did we do enough to win the championship? If it's in business, it's to make a certain amount of money, or it's to make a certain product or service and deliver it to as many people as possible. So if you can explain your vision as a leader, your people will follow. And then the leader also has to understand how to follow. So it's not just a one-sided story. It's not a story of a dictator, although we've had history of a lot of dictators in the world, but eventually dictators fail. And the reason they fail is because the people eventually don't follow them anymore. But good leaders always have great followers, always. I think the vision in peace is probably universal, and that is a world with the absence of conflict. So if the vision for peace is absence of conflict, then you already have your vision. So now, if you have a different goal for peace in terms of specific outcomes, something that the students need to learn, or something that the conference wants to achieve from a global perspective, then that should become your vision. But in general, I would say that if peace is the absence of conflict in your life, in your school, in your state, in your country, on the world, then then we have the vision of what peace ought to be.
My name's Amelia, and how can we encourage other schools to embrace peace initiatives?
Well, thank you, Amelia. I think the best way to have other schools get involved is to find the people at those schools that have like values. And if they have like values and are interested in what you're doing and what your school's doing, then, and you also have to talk about what you're trying to achieve. Like I was saying earlier, if you can tell them what your vision is and could they participate with you, then I think they will come and join you.
Do you believe it's important to teach the next generation about peace at an early age?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if you think about having chaos in your life, right? Chaos doesn't make you feel good. And so the earlier you can think about how peace will benefit your life and benefit the life of others, it's going to be very good. And so, whatever you guys are doing to encourage others to think about peace, you should have what we call in the business world a little, we call it elevator pitch. So when you walk in to an elevator or you walk into a room and somebody says, "What do you do?" Well, gee, I'm all about developing peaceful resolution in my school, in my state, in the world. We'd like you to join us. Do you have any interest? And so a lot of times if you're talking to people like that, you might be able to encourage them to join what you're doing. So the more you can articulate what it is that you're doing, the earlier more people will join you.
Hello, I'm Mason. What experience in your life, whether it be the Army or working with the UN or some other, would you say made the greatest contribution to peace?
Oh, that's a good question, Mason. I think that's the biggest question of the day, right? Well, I would say that the biggest contribution to peace typically are those who can influence the greatest number of people. So if you look at the world at large, it depends on the period of history that you're talking about. If you would say today, who is probably contributing the most to the level of peace in the world, I would say that it's probably the UN. Because if you take all the organizations of the UN, whether it's UNICEF or the World Food Program, they're reducing the misery in the world. So I have a saying that if you want to be successful in delivering peace, you have to reduce the misery index in the world. And if the misery index is high, that means people suffer. If it's low, there's less suffering. So I would say the UN right now is probably doing the most to try to level peace. And, of course, you can add the World Health Organization as one of those organizations in that as well.
What are your thoughts on cybercrime in the context of peace?
That's interesting. Well, cybercrime is very disruptive right now, and of course, I spend a lot of time in the cybercrime world with the various law enforcement agencies. But cybercrime is what we would call a disruptor. In other words, it can disrupt your life. It disrupts the banking system. It can disrupt the GPS system. So if you're navigating, it could disrupt that. If you're going to the hospital, most recently we had many hospitals that have been hit with cyber criminals, and it interrupts your doctor from making the right diagnosis, or maybe they get the wrong information. So you don't want this chaos brought on by cybercrime, but the internet has allowed that to occur, and of course social media as well, because cyber criminals have a lot of tools today to disrupt your life. So if we can keep the cybercrime down and secure all your devices, your computers, your phones, your smart TVs, smartwatches, all of those things, you'll have a peaceful life. But once it's disrupted, you'll have a little bit of chaos. So the big thing here is cybercrime, which here in the United States is overseen by the FBI and overseen by the Secret Service and also by Homeland Security. Those are the big agencies that are out there trying to reduce that cybercrime and provide a level of peace for Americans. And of course, we connect with other people and other organizations in the world to help as well. So, yeah, so cybercrime, if it proliferates, it'll create more chaos and there'll be less peace.
Thanks, Nevaeh. And my question is, what do you hope people will do to help promote peace after the Peace Festival?
Well, my hope would be that you continue to grow, and thank you for your questions, Amir, but that you continue to grow and get other allies, other students that will work with you and have them join you on different projects so that you can do more good, and hopefully they'll join you, and maybe they'll get a friend to join them, and we'll get more people involved.
If you had the opportunity to, would you join the FBI?
Well, I've done so much work with them over the years. It's I really don't need to join them because I work with them. So, but they're a great organization. They have a lot of capabilities. They do a lot of good for our country because they work not only here in the United States, but they work on criminal issues all across the world.
What is the significance of your military patches?
Basically, one basic symbol, and that is the eagle, globe, and anchor, which stands for obviously the eagle is the national bird of the United States. The globe is where the Marine Corps operates anywhere on the planet. And the anchor means that we're soldiers of the sea. So we work with the Navy, and that's what essentially Marine means, is soldier of the sea. One of the most successful veterans is Fred Smith, who's the CEO of FedEx. So if you know 7-Eleven, 7-Eleven is run by a Army veteran.
How do you think art, music, and literature contribute to building peace?
Well, I think going back to critical thinking skills, art and math and music and all of that goes together. It also enriches your life. And, when people are doing creative things, they have less time for conflict.
Do you think that festivals like the Peace Festival are important, and what do you think is the most important element of a festival like that?
Well, I think the biggest thing is getting the people together to understand, again, how to reduce conflict, right? Because at the end of the day, if you think about the conflicts in the world, they're very tribal. Tribes are really divided by culture. And so when cultures clash, usually you have conflicts. And so what peace festivals do, as far as I'm concerned, is bring all these tribes together to try to think like-minded for the success of everybody's tribe on how you should conduct your life. And because, nobody wants to have conflict, right? Nobody wants to have, chaos at their front door. I mean, it's not a peaceful life if you have that. And unfortunately, we have many places in the world where that occurs every day right now. And so when we can figure out how to make it better for everybody, then, peace will prevail. But unfortunately, human beings, after the many years we've been on this planet, still have not figured out how to be peaceful. We always talk about we're a civilized society, but I would tell you we're still all barbarians at heart because people get mad, they don't know how to manage their emotions, and subsequently conflicts occur.
If war and peace were personified, who do you think would win, a physical or intellectual confrontation?
That's a good question. In fact, think about the personification of those things. Really, the intellect will always win. Unfortunately, most people don't live by their intellect. They live by their emotion. They live by the things that make them feel good, make them feel mad, make them feel loved, those types of things. But if they applied their intellect more, the intellect would win in that situation. At least it should. Well, unfortunately, in the real world, if you think about conflict, and especially here in the United States, and I tell this to people all the time that in the United States, the military never starts the war. It's always the politician. So your best defense against conflict is to select and vote in politicians that have the right mindset to be successful at peace. There's politicians. I mean, if you listen to some of the conversations going on now, whether it's here in the state of Texas or around the United States or even other countries, the politicians are exacerbating conflict. You don't necessarily see the military guys doing that. They get involved when the politicians want them to get involved, but it's really the politicians that create the environment for conflict.
So is the diplomat the job in between?
Well, the diplomats are selling two scenarios. One is if they're working for a politician that wants conflict, the question is that diplomat really sort of diffusing conflict, or are they exacerbating conflict? So it depends on how the language is, and this is where words really matter, right? So you can inflame the situation with the wrong set of words, or you can defuse it. And so in many cases right now, a lot of these words are instigating more conflict than is necessary.
What country do you think manages peace the best?
Well, I'd have to say the top of the pile is Switzerland, because they're the most neutral.
But are they really neutral?
Not completely. Of course, there's issues that go on in the world of banking. People that know the Swiss banking. Swiss banking has very segmented ways that they handle money for the world, and so our Treasury Department gets involved in those things, but it does create conflict because you have sometimes people that are part of maybe criminal cells that hide money there, and so there's they try to take a neutral position, at least in conflict they do, but in other areas like finance, they're a little more controversial.
I'm Maya, and I was wondering what sacrifices do you think are necessary for achieving peace?
Well, I think the sacrifices that are always necessary is whether an organization or a country or a state or a group of people decide what is the ultimate sacrifice they want to make. Obviously, the ultimate sacrifice you make is giving up one's life for peace. And that happens, with military people if they're out on a battlefield and they're trying to keep their country or their people safe. So those sacrifices occur. So, and we have so many people in various countries doing the same thing, trying to protect their people. So that's one sacrifice. The other sacrifice may be economic sacrifice. In the United States, we spend a lot of money to help other countries try to achieve better economy, peace, that sort of thing. So we spend a lot of money in the foreign aid area. And, some people disagree with how we're doing some of that, but, it does help because, so far in the last 100 years or so, the United States has generated more money than any other country. And obviously China's a close second these days. And, but, sometimes their objectives are different than ours. So again, how do we solve conflict? And you've probably seen recently the president has talked to the president of China, and we're trying to figure out how to address things from conflict in space and conflict between countries, who supports who, because we all kind of look and see what each other are doing, but until the two sides sit down, it's hard to develop a course of peace, but we all have to agree. I like the Rottweilers because it was a very disciplined dog. It's a very loyal dog, and it has a history that goes back to Hannibal the Great when Hannibal left Africa and came to Europe. So that's how the dog, and that dog has probably one of the oldest histories in terms of dogs. So we loved it from that perspective. Unfortunately, Rottweilers have a very short life compared to most dogs. So it's always heartbreaking when they pass away. So when I was in Iraq, the governor of El Anbar province, his name was Sami what was his name? Sami Rashid Mamoun. Well, anyway, he had 2 kids. So it was in the middle of the war. One day his son was going to school, and he was kidnapped by a bunch of terrorists. And of course, like any father and mother, they were disappointed and obviously concerned. And so when we got word from the terrorist group that kidnapped him, they said, "Well, we want this ransom, and this ransom." So I told the governor, I said, "Well, look, I'll pay the ransom for you." And the governor said to me, he says, "No," he says, "I will pay the ransom because this is my son, and I want to make sure that they know that I paid the ransom." Well, I told all my Marines, I said, "Well, look, I want you to make sure we go out and we search everywhere and find his son." And so about 3 days later, we actually found his son and returned his son to his father. And so, when you think about that, in the middle of a war, there's a kidnapping, a young boy going to school, just trying to learn his lessons, and a group of men, terrorists, kidnap him and take him to some unknown place. But we were fortunate enough that we were able to find him. So I tell you that story because, it could happen to anybody in a wartime, and it could happen to anybody in peacetime. And it's important that when you're looking at your surroundings, wherever you go, you understand what's around you, who's around you, and be aware of your surroundings. I know a lot of people are looking at their phones today and they don't look around, but you really need to look around and make sure that you keep yourself safe. So the story here is about making sure that you understand who's around you and how to keep yourself safe. The Secret Service has 2 jobs. I mean, they work for the Department of the Treasury. And so they're Treasury agents on one side. And then if they work in the protective service, they are agents to protect the President of the United States. So those are the 2 basic functions of Secret Service. And of course, when I was the President's military aide, of course, I work with the Secret Service every day, making sure that, all the President's movements, wherever he was going, in the country, out of the country, or just around the city of Washington, D.C., to make sure that the president was protected. So sounds kind of glorious, but it's really not. It's just basically a job. So I work with President Carter first and President Reagan. Sort of the underlying question is what are you guys going to do in the peace conference, and how many people are going to show up?
We have the talent show organization here.
Okay, so for the Peace Festival, we plan on having some sports events where we're going to be playing sports for peace. So for one of the ideas is tug of peace instead of tug of war, where we plan to talk about different issues, and we're connecting this to peace by also making posters with different, peace activists who do sports, athletes.
Right. So is so using the tug of war, that's a good metaphor for conflict, because one side wins, one side loses, or if everybody's equal, nobody goes anywhere, right? So what do you have a goal in terms of what you want to express by doing tug of war, for example?
So our goal is to show that we can work together. So we're still trying to come up with a concept of it, but we thought Tug of Peace would be a good idea.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you.
For the Peace Festival, we're holding a talent show so people could showcase their talents, and we can like all communicate together while showcasing our talents. And we're mostly doing it so students can entertain themselves after or before the Peace Festival, and look forward to coming to the Peace Festival too.
Great, great. Thank you.
Additionally, we will be having a Model United Nations simulation done at the Peace Festival on the topic of reforming the UN.
Oh, great. Well, let me ask you this question before you leave. So if you're going to reform the UN, what reforms are you going to do?
Well, the ideas that I've heard come up with and that I've come up with are, and just about all ideas that have been come up with rarely could ever be implemented due to how the UN was founded and how it already works. And so the idea of UN reform in Model United Nations is almost entirely theoretical, but the ideas are good to think of in case of them being possible to implement.
And what are your ideas?
And additional members of the Security Council, removal of the veto power for the permanent five, making amendments to the UN Constitution easier, and restoring the trusteeship for an alternative purpose in protecting smaller nations.
Great. Well, that sounds good. It sounds like those would be the same ones I would recommend. That's good.
Thank you.
Marie Jose, you're gonna do a booth, right? Why don't you tell them about it? Over here. But the basic idea, why don't you tell them? It's a nice idea. Come on, he won't bite. I'll tell him.
Yeah.
So it's Portugal and Brazil, right?
Portugal and Mexico.
And Mexico?
Yeah.
So she's getting together with a friend and doing a booth on Portugal and Mexico, similarities and differences, and they're very good friends. So they're gonna create like a comparison between their cultures. And they asked to do this by themselves. It's not anything we asked them to do. Nolan, we're doing a documentary. You want to tell them about that? No, thanks. So we are getting a videographer. He's going to come for 2 hours, and we're creating a set of questions, and we're going to also, I think we're going to rehearse it a little bit more considering how we're producing today. But he'll be shooting us for 2 hours, and then he'll shoot the event, and we're starting a documentary so that we can show what we're actually doing.
Great. Excellent.
Part of the problem is what we're doing is very organic. So I think if we capture it, eventually.
Oh, yeah. Well, it'll help you with your history, right? So you establish sort of a history, and then, allows everybody to go back and see it. So maybe the next class coming in, they pick up on the themes of the past, and, you get improvements going forward.
Right. Well, we're trying to create a context. Oh, the peace passport and the 17 stations. Yes. We're creating a little peace passport, and we're going to be going around, and we have the YMCA, the Junior Achievement, the library. We have about 12 different community partners coming, and then we have restaurants, and it's a big event.
No, that's great.
Sophia?
So we're also going to be having, our sixth graders have created imaginary countries throughout this year. So we're showcasing what they've made, and we're going to display that. Is it in the cafeteria?
We're not sure what.
We don't know, but we're going to show what they've done.
Here's an example.
Here.
Can you see?
Oh, yes. I can see it. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to display those. And then also, the seventh graders throughout this year have been researching a country, and we've made trifolds on those as well. So we're also going to be displaying those throughout the school.
Great. Well, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Are you practicing to be an international lawyer?
I'm not, but that sounds fun.
Oh, great. Well, it sounds like you might be a good one.
Thank you.
That's a high compliment. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Okay, what else are we doing, guys? We're doing a talent show. Where's our talent show group? Oh, we did? What about the fashion show? They're creating four, I don't think that group's in this class. We're creating 4 original outfits that represent
Mhm.
culture, and then 20 models are going to represent 16 their own culture, and the 4 the culture we create as a group.
Mhm. Great, great.
That's just the beginning.
That's fantastic.
Then we have line dancers coming, and council person just asked if they could come and represent gun safety
Hmm.
out of the blue. So, is that
Interesting.
interesting?
Yeah.
Okay, do you have any other questions for us?
No, it sounds like you're doing really good. What day is your conference? Your Peace
May-
Festival?
Thursday, May 23rd.
Okay, great, great. Well, I'm sure you guys are going to do really well, and you're going to have a great time.
Definitely going to have a good time. Our biggest dilemma is food trucks or not food trucks.
Mm.
I wish that was our biggest dilemma. What? To food truck or not?
Yeah.
All right.
How many are you expecting, Maya? How
Well,
many?
last year we had about 2,000, and I don't know how many we're going to have this year. I'm hoping it's going to be less but it's probably going to be about that many.
It's going to be about that many again, 2,000
Yeah.
again?
Because people
2006, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders and their parents?
yes, and their families and the
Mhm.
incoming 6th graders. It's sort of an event that a lot of people. Okay, guys,
Mhm.
let's not stop packing. Let's stop, please. Have a seat, Isabella. Have a seat, please. Okay, I want you guys to take a moment, think of a big thank you in your heart, and we'll all say it at the same time. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I hope you felt that. There's a lot of love in that.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me, and best of luck to all you guys.
Really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.